Now it's my pleasure to once again welcome Jay Meier to the stage. Jay is another one of the people that I met when I first started out here. I've known him for a long time. He's a renowned industry expert, and many of you will surely remember him from his engaging keynote at our last virtual event in September. That was titled The PKI Fallacy. Here he is again with a new presentation. This one's titled Architecture Matters. Who decides your identity? Jay, take it away.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks to everybody at Find Biometrics. These are great opportunities to talk about what's wrong and what's right with the industry and where it's going. And so I really look forward to sharing insights again since the last time. So what are we going to learn today? We're going to learn why money laundering and online frauds are really an identity verification problem. And it really comes down to simple math, right? If X equals Y, solve for Y. And we'll have some other extra credit questions later. We're going to talk about why KYC regulations and info checks actually enable identity theft, and why face matching and liveness detection must be involved in all electronic know your customer systems. And why identity issuers are so critical to the remote and unsupervised identity ecosystem like the internet. So ultimately, we're going to end up talking about emerging mobile driver's license standards and digital ID, and how biometric re-verification should be included. So there's a bunch of slides now that I'm going to kind of breeze through. They say you have to have 12 to 15 slides. Well, I'm at like 19 slides. The first bunch of them probably are going to be familiar. So first off, okay, there's this place called the dark web, right? It's kind of like the Russia of the internet. We know it's there. There's a boundary to it somehow. We know bad stuff happens there, but we don't know much else about it. Well, your identity information and a lot of other important identity related data is for sale on the dark web. This is a snapshot of a service that you can actually buy fake IDs on the dark web. And the thing is that these fake IDs are very realistic. Okay, they either use real legitimate people's identities, stolen identities, or they can create a synthetic identity. Fake IDs, they use real identities to bypass synthetic identity checks. And that's one of the enabling tools for criminals, right? They're customizable for the fraudster. That you can kind of custom order what you want your fake driver's license or passport to look like. They have the same scannable barcodes on them. They have relatively official looking, if not official holograms built into them. They can use anybody's face, your face, crook's face. They can use a AI enhanced morphed face that looks a little bit like you or a lot like you, right? And even the IC chips in like an electronic passport, they have fake chips these days that actually respond with a fake PKI certificate. And this stuff is happening, we're not talking about just one-offs. We're talking about thousands and thousands, tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of these fake IDs pouring into the United States every year. This article is a little old, it's from 2020, but it kind of gives you a sense of how this is happening. If you went to the DHS websites and looked, you'd see it's like, they have lots of references to fake IDs being intercepted. So, we presume that we have this idea that we're stopping fraud and money laundering and other types of online problems, but we're really not. The United Nations makes estimates for this. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but they said in 2010, fraud in the United States was something like $300 billion. And as of 2020, they've updated it. They said that the estimated total money laundered each year is between 2 and 5% of global GDP. I mean, we're not talking about small amounts of money. We are talking about systemic fraud and systemic money laundering systems. And in fact, we talk a good game about how we're going to prevent this stuff and how we're going to regulate these highly regulated industries. But the reality is we're not. Okay. And in 2006, the United States joined a consortium of countries in the Financial Action Task Force to establish standards to combat money laundering and the funding of terrorist organizations and things like that. Well, in 2016, it turned out that they do reviews periodically to see if the members are actually doing what they said they were going to do. Well, in 2016, the U.S. was woefully behind the standard, and even in 2020, the United States still had not met the compliance requirements for the standard. And importantly, the areas where the U.S. fails, is maybe even partially compliant, is in areas regarding due diligence of beneficial owners of things like accounts and legal persons and financial instruments. Okay, so this is systemic, Anyway, so how do we stop the fraud? Well, we just need to do some simple math, right? And I love these logic progressions. I love making things simple. First of all, X equals Y, solve for Y. Can anybody do that? Anybody make that calculation? I don't know, because it equals X, whatever the hell X is, okay? Well, that is exactly how our identity management systems work today, right? I like to say bad data in is bad data out. If you don't know absolutely who you are enrolling in your system, you can't know who you are authenticating later to gain access to your services, privileges, and assets. So it's critically important to verify a legal identity at the issuer during new customer enrollment. You have to verify the claimant, the person presenting this identity, is actually the same person who was issued the legal identity in the first place. And the only way you can really do that is using biometrics. You have to re-verify that the claimant, you have to verify them against the legal identity using Liveness proven biometrics during account access control. So that ensures that this is the same person that you enrolled, that you trust is the same person that's represented by the legal identity. Well, guess which components we aren't doing, right? Might be in red. Number 2 and number 3, we're really not doing that, okay? We aren't verifying the claimant is the same person because we're really not even doing sufficient due diligence to understand much about these identities in the first place. And so bad data in is bad data out. You can't re-verify someone that you really don't have much confidence in, that you really know. So a little joke, extra credit problem. If X equals Y and X equals John J. or Matt, what is Y? It's John J. or Matt, right? So, if you don't know for sure, if you're using a probabilistic calculation, and it's a very loose verification system, if it's a junky verification system, it could be J, John, or Matt. It could be, Kathy, Janie, or Annie. It could be anybody. And so you may be authenticating a fraud every single day. And it's not just me saying this, okay? Here's a group called Hacker Noon, and they evaluate online verification systems. And this is a screenshot, and they basically said at the time of this that they found that some identity verification vendors were just taking photocopies of a driver's license, not even validating the driver's license was legitimate, and just taking that as due diligence on who you were enrolling. Well, we have to go back in the slides, but we already talked about all the fake IDs and all the identity data that's for sale. So I think you can see why this is problematic. Well, the problem is, as I see it, is that sometimes some IDV vendors sell compliance. Last time I kind of made a big stink about PKI, and I said a couple things that were maybe a little inflammatory, and I got some hate mail. But so not all IDV vendors are bad. Only some of them are bad. If your IDV vendor isn't one of them, then this doesn't apply, right? But the reality is that we already know that the U.S. banking system is not complying with KYC with requirements that should. Let me back up. The U.S. is not complying with standards regarding money laundering. Banks are using KYC regulations that rely on fake IDs and synthetic identities and morphed facial images, and they aren't even trying to validate these in some cases, right? So it's they try to take an image of the driver's license. They verify the legal identity exists at the DMV. The AMVA maintains a system where you can ping it and find out if this legal identity actually exists. And then they check credit bureaus. Well, guess what? The credit bureaus have all been hacked. That's where the data on the dark web came from. So how can you trust that information, right? I mean, come on, folks. We require regulatory compliance with FinCEN KYC requirements, but they're really kind of crappy requirements. They're really low bar requirements. And then banks and other service providers that are regulated in this way, they outsource it. They outsource it to companies to distribute their risk and liability onto somebody else. They outsource it to companies so they can say they're compliant, check the box, right? And then they hammer on their vendors to reduce friction and enable higher conversion rates. And so their revenues can grow and their profitability can be enhanced. And by the way, I'm not saying your bank is bad. I'm not saying anybody's really bad, but criminals pay fees too. That's all I'm going to say about that. So what do we have to do? Right? We have to match the liveness proven face to the validated legal photo. Now, a lot of companies and a lot of people are going to say, well, we already do that. We do face matching to selfie, right? Well, how do you know it's not a fake ID that you're matching the face to? How do you know your face verification system actually works very well? Not so sure. So, I like to say we have to match the liveness proven face to the validated legal photo, the one that was taken for the driver's license in the first place. And that means you have to know that it's the right photo, right? Which the DMV has to tell you or supply you. So maybe there's even a better way. Maybe we can match the digital photo using face matching, liveness and face matching capability to the digital the ID issuer's database. And then, if we were matching this applicant's face live in real time to the face image that's stored at the DMV, we really don't, as long as we verify the identity exists, we really don't need a driver's license at all. So you guys can save some money on your photocopying. And why is this important? It's important because our legal identities are who we are in the marketplace. We represent ourselves with our driver's licenses, with our passports, with our birth certificates, with our social security cards. I like to say, if you have to change your name, you have to ask the government in order to do it. That legal identity is who we are out there in the real world. Well, there's some promising opportunities out there. We're seeing some standards roll out around mobile driver's licenses. Why is this important? Because our real card driver's licenses are increasingly fake. We can't trust them, right? So the thing about a mobile driver's license, it can be use strong encryption to make sure that the data, the image, and everything in it is right. Okay, and so that if we can validate the cryptographic certificate associated with the MDL, then we know that the MDL hasn't been compromised, and we can trust that the identity is verified because the DMV wouldn't issue it if it wasn't, right? And you can trust that the picture is the picture at the DMV because, again, the cryptographic certificate guarantees that it hasn't been corrupted. The problem is that the system as it's currently set up doesn't really have an efficient way to address identity verification in remote and unsupervised systems. So, I kind of slammed these guys, AMVA and the ISO group last time around. And the reality is that they're, 18013-5 is very well designed for what it's designed to do, but it doesn't go far enough. And presumably someday down the road, we'll have ISO 18013-7, which I believe is the part that's going to tackle identity verification, but who knows? And there's a lot of things that could go wrong with that. So we think that biometric verification is really important. So what makes biometric verification truly strong, right? Well, first of all, you have to verify the integrity of the biometric sensor and the data flows from it. So our app, our technology, we don't have an app, but when our technology is embedded in somebody else's app, it uses cryptography to ensure that the image and the sensor, the camera, and the data flow from it have not been messed with, right? You want to verify the user's legal identity and then bind a proven biometric data, liveness proven biometric, to that identity when you enroll, like for a driver's license, okay? The problem is, the PKI fallacy is that you binding an authenticator to an identity somewhere is a challenge, right? The PKI fallacy is really all about that. How do you bind a device that's validated by the certificate? How do you bind that device authenticator to a legal identity somewhere? Is the DMV going to issue you a stick that you plug in your computer? It doesn't work that way. It can't work. So we have a problem understanding who's using the device, who's holding the stick. We have a problem understanding and verifying exactly who is using this capability. Another thing you have to do is capture and measure as much data as you can. That's why at FaceTech we like 3D, because we can capture orders of magnitude more data, and that correlates to higher match confidence. You want to capture liveness and matching data concurrently. I like to say you want to have the data wound together, right? Well, here's the thing about face matching is that the camera captures both the liveness data and the matching data. If you use face-based liveness, comes from the same data flow. Why is that an advantage? Well, it's an advantage because you know what sensor it came from. So if there's data in that data packet that came from something else or we don't know came from that sensor, it may have been corrupted. There may have been something fed into that system. You don't know. So winding the data together gives us a really good opportunity to test if this is valid, right? You want to use liveness proven biometric data that's previously bound to a legal identity. Your driver's license has your face on it. The DMV takes a picture of your face. That's how they bind a physical representation to an identity. Your face is bound to the identity using the picture, and that is effectively biometrics, right? Using biometric remote matching for biometrics may require some horsepower. And you have to make sure that you know whose biometric you're matching to and you know what biometric you're actually comparing to the verified biometric. Anonymous biometrics are a problem for a truly strong remote verification system. So here's a picture. My boss and I were jawboning about this, how to solve this problem. And it took him about a half an hour to figure this out, right? How do we protect privacy? How do we make sure the citizen has control? But how can we use biometrics, liveness proven biometrics, to match against the identity profile at the DMV rather than something on the device that we can't control? Well, we can encrypt the data, okay? And actually, I'm going to go through a chart here. I know this is really busy. My communications guy hates this kind of thing because it's so busy. So I'm trying to make it easy for you. But let's just go through some steps, right? You load a DMV MDL app onto your phone, right? The DMV MDL app verifies the camera feed and verifies that the data from the camera has not been corrupted. So there's no deep fake injections, no video injections of any kind. The device holder takes a biometric video selfie using the app that captures both liveness and face matching data concurrently. And we already discussed why that's important. There's another reason why that's important, which I'll discuss in a minute. The device encrypts the liveness of the biometric data and securely passes it to the DMV. Okay, encryption Again, PKI guys, I love you, love encryption. We can secure data pretty darn well. If you're saying encryption doesn't work well enough for biometrics, then we have problems with all of these systems that use encryption. So let's not talk out of both sides of our mouth. Okay. So you move the encrypted data behind the DMV firewall, behind the government firewall. That's where you decrypt the data, and then you check for the liveness, right? No third party handles the data. No third party is storing consumer data off in their own database somewhere, in England, right? They're not sharing data with anybody for marketing purposes, right? It's just between the device, the MDL owner and the DMV. If liveness is confirmed, the system deletes the liveness data, and that leaves only biometric matching data, right? And at that point, the system can compare the biometric matching data to the DMV's verified driver profile picture, which they already have on file, right? They're not creating anything new, really. They're just putting biometrics in the same folder with other biometrics, if you want to think of it that way. There's no surveillance style biometrics. There's no one-to-many matching in this. It's all one-to-one, which, by the way, is exactly what Apple does with 3D Face. Okay, they're matching your biometric against a stored value somewhere. It's not matched against all the other drivers in the database. Nothing like that. So then the DMV system creates a timestamp. The MDL standard right now has a token that's timestamped. It says that this MDL was valid as of 2 days ago. So you present it to somebody and they say, well, that was from 2 days ago, and you can refresh it. You simply, pull on the screen or slide on the screen, and it refreshes moments later, and you get a fresh certificate that says, right now, we know that this is a valid MDL, right? Well, you can do that with another token that the system spits out for the biometric match. So when you ask the DMV to match your biometric, they spit back a token, a timestamped token that says it matched. The face that's captured by the holder of the device, encrypted and sent to the DMV, matches, and all they do is send back a token that says, yep, it matches, and you're good to go. So then the device holder can pass that new token to a relying party like a bank to prove that they are actually the person represented by the driver's license at the bank, and then the one that's stored in the device and is physically present at the time that this transaction was happening. So there's no third party. The government can't track what you do with the token because they have no ability to track it, right? You can do whatever you want with it. Guarantees the citizen control and privacy. The token could be refreshed at any time. If you're applying remotely for a bank account, the bank says, oh, your biometric token is, 30 days old. How do I know you didn't pass this device to your brother? Well, you can refresh the biometric token, take another selfie, send it to the DMV. They decrypt it behind the firewall. They check it against the picture again, send a new token in 2 seconds. And it says, okay, we know that this is the right guy as of 2 seconds ago. So this is a great model for DMVs and remote identity verification system providers everywhere. Well, here's a great big, chart. This is a flow chart, which, Kevin developed. The guy is amazing. He developed it like in moments after we were deciding what to do here. I'm going to let you decipher it if you want to dig into it, but this is available. You can take a look at it. All of these charts, schematics are available for people to use. Okay. And we're promoting the model here because we think we've solved a big problem. And the last problem that we have to talk about, everybody says, oh, there's a honeypot. Oh, there's a central database and there's biometric data in it. So we're guaranteed our lives are ruined forever, right? Well, here's why that's not necessarily a problem, okay? In fact, we think we solved the honeypot problem. Face liveness and face matching data are unique, right? Other biometric measurements have the same uniqueness, but not all of them do. Face liveness and matching data can be collected concurrently from the same video feed, right? DMVs should require that the liveness and matching data from any biometric be collected and submitted concurrently, just the way I've described, wound together, right? So that you can tell if they came from different sensors, right? And they use strong encryption to deliver it behind the DMV firewall. Here's a hint. If you're worried about the database, we already know that 85% of data breaches are perpetrated by exploiting weak user authentication. Again, it's not the cryptography. It's not the systems for securing the data that are a problem. It's that we can't tell who you're letting into the database. So why don't you, DMV administrators, set up a 3D face liveness proven biometric access control system for your employees? And that way you close that vulnerability that so many data breaches are victim to. Once the liveness is confirmed behind the biometric, DMV firewall, the system should automatically delete the liveness data. Okay, and this is the second reason why winding it together, concurrent capture, concurrent submission, winding it together. The second reason why it's so important. When you delete the livening data, the liveness data, and it leaves biometric matching data only, okay? That's what gets matched against the picture. Well, the matching, in order to submit a data packet to this system, you have to have the matching data and the liveness data wound together. So even if somebody got into the database, if you did a lousy job with your cryptography and your access control system, and somebody got into your database, the biometric only data would be rejected because it lacks the required liveness data. So we think we've solved it. The hackers couldn't use the data if they wanted to. So we think we've solved that honeypot risk. We think we've solved the privacy problem and the control problem for consumers out in the field. And we think that this system can raise the integrity of remote identity verification immensely. And that's all I got.